Chapter 39, The Destiny of a Nation, which historians also refer to this time as the Righteous Empire. So, America was a land of freedom and opportunity. That's why the Pilgrims and the Puritans headed this way. There were vast new lands that could be established, and Pastor Lyman Beecher felt that Christians should seize the opportunity to impact the religious and the political destiny of a nation. So during the 19th century, the Protestant expansion into the American West had a major impact on the development of America. Christians saw this as an opportunity to take this blank canvas and create a Christian nation. So Shelley describes this Western movement in America as a violent shift. Native Americans were removed from their lands and settlers moved into this untamed wilderness. The frontiersmen, which were also referred to as barbarians, embraced the lawlessness of the West. And so this small minority of Christians recognized an opportunity for evangelism in the West. And so Shelley says, in time, the crude, turbulent, and godless society of the West was tamed, and more than any other single force, it was evangelical Christianity that did it. So Shelley describes that there are two options that were available to the evangelicals. The first was what he referred to as the voluntary society. So since the Bill of Rights prevented any governmental regulations on religion, there was the freedom to define how religion would be practiced. So the voluntary societies had been developed in England to evangelize over in India, and this model was then applied to America. It was used to influence public opinion, to support missionary and educational opportunities, as well as spread reform ideals such as temperance and observation of the Sabbath. Some examples of these voluntary societies were the American Bible Society, the American Tract Society, the American Sunday School Union, and the American Education Society. The second option that Shelley identifies that was available to the evangelicals was the revival, which occurred in both Eastern and Western America. In the East, around 1800, it was referred to as the Second Great Awakening. And in the West, especially in Kentucky and Tennessee, it really awakened the various inhabitants, and this awakening, the type of awakening and how it was undertaken, was really mirrored in the inhabitants. It was rugged, it was wild, and it was boisterous. It was primarily addressed towards an illiterate population. So James McGready was one of the revivalists that kind of took on this expansion in the West, and he really embodied the Western revival movement. He stressed the wrath of God. He referred to the people as stiff-necked sinners. And amazingly, the backwoodsmen at the time really responded to McGready's very inflammatory portrayal of heaven versus hell. So one of the key moments was the Gasper River in July of 1800. It was the first camp meeting, and this is actually a picture or a drawing of that. And it was a service that occurred over multiple days where people traveled from great distances to be a part of this. So I thought that it was an interesting comment that Shelley made about these revivals, indicating that man does not live by fire alone. Some of the major criticisms of these revivals were that there was not sound doctrine that was presented to the people, and it wasn't necessarily very true worship. But this infusion of the Christian principles actually led to questions and eventual outrage over the practice of slavery. So after reading the chapter, there were a couple of things that came to my mind as I was thinking through it. Did this presentation during the revivals of God as this vengeful and punitive person create Christians who then adopted this same attitude of judgment and intolerance, which in the case of slavery was a good thing, but how did it also impact the way that they viewed other people? And If a loving God full of grace and mercy had instead been presented, how would that have impacted the religious tradition within America? So thanks for watching my presentation. I'd be curious to get your responses to those questions.